Hello everyone and welcome to the Blockchain Startup Show. I'm Urbango. Today we have an incredible platform that's reshaping the future of urban mobility and sustainability in the Web3 world. Now I know we're all aware of how technology is rapidly reshaping our world, often at a pace that even exceeds our expectations. As various industries have embraced and harnessed technology, it does raise an intriguing question. Have you ever thought about the potential of technology as a key player in addressing the critical issue of climate change? If this hasn't crossed your mind before, now is the perfect moment for me to introduce you to one such Web3 company that is dedicated to precisely that mission. Meet Urbango, the AI-driven mobility solution that incentivizes sustainable behavior through green tokens generated from verified behavioral data. I'm in conversation with Phanish Bhardwaj, the COO and co-founder of Urbango, and he's going to share his insights into the world of blockchain, the unique features of Urbango, and his vision for the sustainable future of urban mobility. Phanish, hi there and welcome to the show. Let's begin by discussing what made you venture into the Web3 ecosystem. What was the driving force behind your decision to explore this space?
That's a good question, and which I often come across, Avan, with many people who I speak with. See, it all started with an urge of doing something different, something meaningful, right? And it may sound a little cliche, but that's what it was in the beginning. Now, I come from a corporate background. Last 23 years, I've been in the corporate field. Divided into two parts. I've been a hardcore technical guy for the first 10, 12 years of my life, then a complete enterprise sales guy. Traveled across the world from the eastern part of the world to the Africas and finally the Middle East. Now, one thing that came out very distinctly to me was, can we have a solution that impacts the individual consumer? And that's where me and my founder, Vignesh, sort of came on board. We discussed a lot of ideas. I would say serendipity obviously did kick in as a phenomena for us, and we started working on something, and that's where Urbango got instantiated.
So what led you then to actually start Urbango? Can you talk to us about its genesis?
Now, okay, that's a good one, Avan. Now, honestly speaking, we've heard many people talking about reducing climate change effects, right? The code red or the code green, whatever people are talking, 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees. Now, but if you unpack the problem statement, right, the genesis of the problem is human behavior. And that became the focal point where Urbango had to focus. So Urbango's focus was very simple. Derive a digital solution that looks at incentivizing progressive, sustainable behavior. Because we were very clear that unless the human behavior changes, reduction in emissions will not happen, a climate change reduction will not happen. And hence our focus became, look at the climate reduction from a digital solution, use all the latest technology elements that you have, but stay digitally focused to derive a solution to improve consumer behavior. And that's where the focal point of Urbango is today.
And I'm curious to understand why you selected climate change as the focus for your Web3 based business.
Now, we all passionately talk about sustainability, but trust me, more often than not, it is a boardroom, information being exchanged, people like talking about it, but then we looked at sustainability as a business problem to solve. When I say a business problem to solve, while we set up Urbango for profit purposes, it has to bring in money for us, money for investors, at the same time make business sense for the enterprises and consumers to delve into solving problems in sustainability. So that was very important for us to actually delve into that area. And that's why we looked at AI as the first thing, because our entire algorithm, which is under patent right now, called as proof of sustainability, is built on AI. Then we looked at the Web3 elements, blockchain. The entire algorithm runs on a permission blockchain. Then the incentive mechanism. How do I incentivize a consumer to do good? And trust me, we are humans. By DNA, we would not do an iota of good to the society or to the environment unless we are monetarily benefited. And that's ingrained in us and nothing wrong about it, right? So we thought, okay, is there a way that I could incentivize the good behavior, the sustainable behavior, the progressively consistent sustainable behavior? And obviously, Web3 sort of came in to rescue from a technology standpoint. So, and we are today sort of proud of the fact that we're using all gamuts, all aspects of the Web3 as a technology, AI as a technology to deliver a solution.
So, Phanish, what excites you about building at the intersection of Web3 and sustainability?
Okay. Now, see, while a lot of things are spoken about Web3, for us, Web3 was an enabling layer. The primary focus was, what's the business problem? And That's where we started. So sustainability or reducing climate change became the business problem part of it. Now, for a business problem to have a right solution, which solves the business problem in the spirit and the sense that we as founders wanted to do, Web3 came in very handy. Now, while people talk of blockchain, people talk of the token element part of it. For us, it was a mechanism to ensure a lot of data being recorded immutably, a lot of data being converted into incentive mechanisms and being given back to the users for the good behavior that they show. And that's where Web3 as a component really came very strong and very handy for us. So when we embarked on this journey, the problem statement was not why Web3. What in Web3 should we look at? Should we look at permission blockchain elements? Should we look at the multiple L1s that we have? Should we look at the oracles that we can utilize? So for us, it was like Web3 was a given. What in Web3, what are the various facets that we start using for our solution to get delivered?
Can you explain then in more detail as to how Urbango's green token system works, how it's incentivizing sustainable behavior among users? Are there any specific success stories or maybe examples of users benefiting from this system that you would like to share?
Yeah, Avan, that's a very good question. So let me be very lucid to explain what Urbango does. It's an AI model which runs over a permission blockchain layer that looks at the behavioral patterns of individual, evaluates the impact it has caused in the environment, and rewards them with green tokens. In simplest terms, this is what Urbango is. Now, if you want to sort of double dip and triple dip into it, a simple example could be I'm traveling from point A to point B to begin with, mobility as a use case to begin with. I'm traveling from point A to point B. I use a particular vehicle type. Today, a vehicle type has a certain fuel type. Depending on all these parameters and depending on how impactful my behavior has been by doing this act, I get rewarded. And every day, what I do in terms of my travel behavior is what gets recorded in the system and becomes a rationale for calculating the impact that I have caused in terms of reducing emissions. My reward mechanism keeps on getting accumulated. Now, that's the mobility part of it. And the algorithm that we use out here is the proof of sustainability, which is under patent right now. When we were looking at the individual's behavior persona, right, we want to create a sustainability persona of the individual. So when I say that, I mean every aspect of human behavior that can contribute towards sustainable living is a part of the solution today. Travel or mobility is the first use case. Then we look at the spend patterns. Then we look at the energy consumption patterns. Then we look at what you're trying to do from a aspect of recyclables or non-recyclables. All these elements constitute of how consciously sustainable your living is. Thereby, you need to get incentivized because you're genuinely doing good to the environment and reducing climate change. When we started off this journey, while we are set up in the Middle East, we started focusing in Netherlands to begin with. And we've hired a sales team out there. In the last 6 to 8 months, we've seen a lot of customers actually wanting to embark on this journey with us. And as we speak, we are in the process of closing a few contracts back in Netherlands to actually deliver this project. And the key underlying principle is very clear. Look at behavioral change as a key focal area for reducing emissions, reducing climate change.
Okay, so Phanish, what's your take then on digital technologies actually tackling climate change?
I've seen a lot of analog systems in my life, but in the last 2 decades or so, we've had a digital evolution in every aspect of life that we do, right? And right from the fact that the way we communicate also has become digital, the fact that on this forum itself. Now, my personal feeling is any business problem needs to be aligned to the way of life we are used to in solving existing problems. And hence, I was very categorical in the fact that when I said a digital technology is the right way to do it. I'll give you an example to substantiate. Today, we are so used to looking at reports coming into your email. When was the last time you tried to figure out to cull out the data? Because you're so used to something coming onto your inbox, right? Likewise, when an IT guy speaks about it, he says everything is cloud enabled. 2007-8, it was a question mark. Today, it's a commodity and rather accepted to be that way. It's a natural thing. So when everything is in a digital ecosystem, coming out with a solution which is within the same framework is the right way to solve a problem. But when the target industry that we are looking at and what we were aiming to do it was very clear that if I have to target the enterprises, if I have to target consumers like you and me, what are we used to? We are used to having a mobile phone. We're used to having a laptop. We're used to having solutions over it to be delivered to us and thereby solve a problem. And that's why digital technology is a given to actually solve a particular problem.
And how important do you think AI and Web3 technology combination is for Urbango?
That's a very good one, Avan. See, I'd probably say it's like a Venn diagram intersection, right? There's an AI world, there's a Web3 world. We fall at the intersection. Both the technologies have to be used in a complementing fashion to sort of derive the best benefit. Now, for us, the basis is AI, right? But at the end of the day, there's a lot of data being consumed, data being generated. How do you handle that data? And that's where Web3 comes in very handy, because it's important that every piece of data, every bit and byte of data that you generate has to be immutably recorded for audits to happen, for people to go back in time and say, hey, listen, I did this because of which I got this. Today, is that possible using Web3? Yes. So Web3 came in with that particular function, immutability of data. Second aspect was, can I actually make the user own the data themselves? Today, for all the good behavior that I show, can I actually walk up to a brand and say, hey, listen, this is my sustainability profile. This is how I've been rewarded. These are my actions. Can I be eligible for a certain amount of discounts, a certain amount of programs that you as a brand have for sustainable customers? That's where Web3 comes in handy, because I own my own data, rather the consumer owns his own data, and they're able to sort of monetize it. So for us, both these technologies work in tandem. And as I said, it's an intersection of two Venn diagrams for us.
All right, and on that note, let's take a very short break. When we return, we'll dive deeper into the world of Urbango with Phanish Bhardwaj. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Blockchain Startup Show. We're in conversation with Phanish Bhardwaj, the COO and co-founder of Urbango. Urbango clearly appears to rely heavily on collecting and analyzing user data for the AI-driven mobility solutions. So how are you ensuring that the privacy and the security of your user data is maintained?
Okay. That's a beautiful question, Avan. Now, this is something that was the starting point when we actually envisaged the solution. Now, when you talk of data privacy, data sovereignty, data residency, there are certain regulations in place, there are certain standards in place to which you need to comply. The GDPR regulations of the EU are mandatory to comply. And thankfully, for the cloud environment that we are setting ourselves, helps us to do that to a large extent. There are certain ISO specifications that you need to sort of comply with, which we will undertake as a part of our audit. There are SOC 2.0 compliances that you need to get certified with. So thankfully for us, the frameworks, the standards are much in place. It's all about complying to them and proving on record that you are in compliance with this, and thereby able to deliver the solution in the form and shape that you expect for the consumers to consume. So for us, it's okay. If you're handling data, you ought to be knowledgeable about this, and you ought to code and be ready to be complied with in any of the audits that come across. So that was as simple as that for us.
Can you take us through some of the main stakeholders when we speak of addressing climate change issues?
That's a good one, Avan. Now, how do I begin with? Okay, it starts with us. When I say us, the consumers. Now, that being said, it's our behavior, and that's how we started. So I'm just trying to create an analogy of how we started, right? We looked at an individual as the first actor who has to change to create an impact. So the entire community has to change. Now, while the community is the first bunch of actors who have to change, the next step comes in is a regulator. Now, the regulator, when I say regulator, or the legislations or the government, have to implement necessary policies to ensure that the goals set up by the COP of the world, or by the Kyoto Protocol or the Paris Accord, gets implemented. The next comes is the large enterprises. See, all of us want the large enterprises to make business. At the same time, we also want large enterprises to make business in a sustainable fashion. So, for instance, while the enterprises may lead to carbon emissions, at the same time, they should do something to reduce it too. Now, these are the three main actors that I see, and which we, in our discussion between me and Vignesh, we generally call it a tripod effect. when you say it's like a tripod, right? Your citizens have to be sustainably conscious. That's you and me. The regulations have to support, and the industrial sector has to be in line with how a sustainable development and industry has to look like. So for us, these are the three main actors, and every country on the map today you see is on the attempt of becoming a sustainable ecosystem in itself. All these three actors are playing a very important part. And for us, the most important part being the sustainability consciousness of individuals, of consumers like you and me.
And Phanish, talk to us about the traction, the kind of partnerships that you've cracked at Urbango.
Okay. Again, this sounds a little bit of cliched. When we embarked on this journey, right, Avan, we realized we couldn't solve everything. Now, when you talk of climate change reduction or sustainability as a business problem, it's not one man's problem and no one person can solve it. So it has to become an ecosystem play. Now, that being said, the question that we had to ask ourselves, are we good enough to do the entire thing, or we get into an ecosystem buildup? The answer was very clear. No point in, okay, aspirations could be high, but one has to be pragmatic in the approach. We said, okay, we stay focused on our technology part of it. We are good at that. Focus on the data. Rest, everything has to be ecosystem. So when I talk of ecosystem, we are very clear. You're talking to enterprises. While they accept your solutions, they want their carbon to be offsetted, and that's a part of a solution too. So we started aligning with carbon exchanges. That was one part. When you talk to enterprises and the mobility providers, they obviously want their fleets to be tracked. So we start interacting with fleet providers. They become a part of this. Additionally, we started aligning with consultancy companies to sort of become an extended sales arm, because they are the ones who probably are able to put our solutions as part of the larger portfolio of sustainability solutions. So that became a third angle of partnership. So we were very clear that we're going to plug in as a cog in the wheel of the overall business problem that the world is facing and create as many partnerships as possible. And all that I spoke just now in terms of partnership is focused with Netherlands as a country to begin with, and we'll expand that to the other parts of the world.
Tell us then about your roadmap and the current stage of the project.
So from a current stage of the project, Avan, we have completed our MVP already. We are in the process of delivering that to a pilot project in Netherlands. That's from a project standpoint. But that being said, we've defined releases of a product to happen starting February onwards. So we have a roadmap for next 8 months, starting February, the end of the next year, 2024. Why only an 8-month roadmap? Because obviously the field is dynamic. We want it to be a work in progress plan, not something etched in stone. And we are sort of looking at changes to it as and when customers sort of look at how the functionalities have to work, because a lot of things depends on data, how we get the data. So from that standpoint, we have clear defined roadmap. That's from a technical and product standpoint. From a business standpoint, we look at Netherlands as a country to begin with, expand to the other parts of Europe, and then get into India, which is our backyard in true sense, capture the market there and start generating monies for ourselves and for our shareholders. So that's the business roadmap that we have, and it's sort of spread over the next 2.5 years.
Now, mobility solutions often face challenges that are related to infrastructure, government regulations, or even changing user needs. So how does Urbango adapt and innovate in response to these factors to maintain its competitive edge?
The answer to this question is very lucid. It relates to the answer that I gave in one of the previous questions, right? The ecosystem buildup. Now, Urbango is not a mobility player. We are a technology player that enables mobility providers or enterprises to become a value-added solution in terms of behavioral change aspects, right? And that's our forte. So when we enter the market, we are very clear, your mobility partner, your fleet provider has to be your partner in the system. So we are going to have a collaboration with them. We don't compete, we collaborate. What does it do for us? We don't get into what they are doing because they do the best. Anything about the infrastructure part of it, we don't really consider much. They do it. We only provide the software layer that gets plugged into their solution. So for us, we just alienated ourselves or insulated ourselves, let me use the right word for that purpose, insulated ourselves from factors that are beyond our control of delivery. Now, giving you an example, okay, let me talk aloud. If I were to sort of look at deploying the solution in India, right? We would look at the fleet providers or the mobility providers in India to integrate with rather than becoming one ourselves, because that's not something that our forte is. And when there are players who are very well established, who have ironed out the entire grounds up level situations, just go ahead and partner with them and deliver the solution. So it's like complementing each other at the end of the day. So from that perspective, we don't believe this is a challenge for us, because for us, we just, as I said, insulated ourselves from that layer completely.
And who do you believe, Phanish, are the key competitors in the Web3 sector for your business? Would you say that the company is the first one to operate in this space?
Okay, from the concept of proof of sustainability, I think we are the first of its kind. But overall, in the Web3 domain, in what we're trying to do, yes, there is competition, which is good for us, because at the end of the day, we want competition to compete with and sort of go one up kind of a thing. So there is healthy competition. There are companies in US, companies in Europe, and there's a company in India too that sort of is embarked on this journey. It's still early days, to be honest with you, because when you talk of these solutions, there's a scope 3 element of it from a emission standpoint. It'll take a couple of years for everybody to mature, and that's the early phase. But it's good to have startups and companies sort of being in this space for us, which obviously reaffirms the fact that we are doing the right thing, because we're not the only one. Being the only one is generally not the right feeling to have. But from a technology standpoint, we believe we're one of the first ones to sort of come up with this kind of a concept called proof of sustainability.
So what are your focus countries then, and what are your plans for the Indian market?
See, India market is a given. And then when I say with that confidence, is because obviously we come from that place. Today, my development team is based out of India. But more than that, the entire community at large, right? The entire consumer base, the enterprises, the sustainability consciousness is actually gradually growing in India. Giving you some data points, we look at the voluntary carbon markets. India is going to be probably one of the top 5 or 6 by 2030. Most of the states in India have already come up with their own individual net zero targets, 2050, 2040, 2035. So I think every bit is being done to ensure that all the necessary measures are being put in place. And one of the articles that I read obviously said India may have its own emission trading system too. Now, with all of these regulatory framework coming in place, the industrial framework coming in place, there's a lot of white space for digital solutions like us to actually come and deliver our solutions in partnership with a lot of big players. So for us, India is a given. Our plan is saying middle or the latter part of next year, we have to be in India and start doing our business. But we prove our concept, everything in Europe, capture a few countries, then target India for sure. And that's necessary for us.
Thanks much then, Phanish, for taking time out and joining us today on the Blockchain Startup Show. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're completely out of time, but do stay tuned because we've got lots more exciting insights and innovation in the world of blockchain technology. See you next time.